Hello, I'm Dr. Archer Crosley, and welcome to Real World Pediatrics. Well, this is another talk on attention deficit disorder. Now, you might be curious as to how we doctors and psychologists diagnose attention deficit disorder. Do we use a blood test? No. Is there a scan on the brain that will tell us what's going on? No. We use history to determine whether a patient has attention deficit disorder. Now, there are many scales and questionnaires that have been devised to diagnose attention deficit disorder. Now, your doctor may ask you to fill out one of these questionnaires. It's a pretty safe bet. There's the Connors scale, there's the Vanderbilt scale, and there are many other scales. Many academic institutions have their own variation of these questionnaires. For me personally, I use my own scale that I developed on my own. My scale hits the major points, and I try to keep the questions to a minimum. I do so because I have attention deficit disorder. And I know if it's one thing that drives me crazy, it's a questionnaire with a million questions on it. Since many of my patients have parents who have attention deficit disorder, I figure they probably feel the same way. For that reason, I use a very short questionnaire. Regardless of which questionnaire the doctor uses, the diagnosis is generally made by history. Now, there are objective tests that have been developed by different companies in which a child sits in front of a computer screen and is asked to tap certain keys depending upon what is on the screen. And your doctor may have one of those tests. Ultimately, though, those tests must rest within the context of the patient history. By the time you see the doctor, you kind of know already that something's going on. If the child is easily distracted and running all over the room and impulsive, this set of symptoms is, for the most part, the diagnosis. If the school has called you up every day telling you that your 6-year-old is disrupting the class, you're already 70% of the way there to the correct diagnosis. Of course, any diagnosis of attention deficit disorder must be sorted out so as to not be confused with other medical or family issues, which might confuse the doctor as to the correct diagnosis. Your doctor will want to know if there are any developmental delays in the child's speech or intellectual performance. He or she will also want to know if the patient is depressed. Children who are depressed can be easily distracted. Now, here's what Google AI has to say. Several conditions can mimic symptoms of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, leading to potential misdiagnosis. These include mood disorders like bipolar disorder and anxiety, learning disorders, sleep disorders, and even physical conditions like thyroid problems. Additionally, conditions like autism spectrum disorder, oppositional defiant disorder, and sensory processing disorder can present with overlapping symptoms, making diagnosis challenging. Okay, once the diagnosis is made, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the diagnosis. It's only what your doctor believes is going on. The ultimate test is often the medication itself. Does it work? Now, you often hear your doctor say, well, let's do a trial of the medication. That doesn't mean that your doctor is experimenting on your child. What he or she is saying is, let's see if the medication helps. I would say most of the time, 90% of the time in my experience, the medication helps. But there are those times when the medication doesn't work. You, the parent, are in charge of whether you want your child to continue the medication or not. You shouldn't feel pressure into taking the medication because the doctor recommends it. If you don't feel it's working, get rid of it. But if it is working, and you'll largely know that by your child's grades and performance in school, I would continue the medication. Now, I can't tell you how many times parents have stopped the ADHD medicine because they thought either the child had outgrown the medicine, the child didn't want to take the medicine, or they felt it wasn't working, only to find out upon discontinuing the medicine that the child did significantly worse in school. So use good judgment when stopping the medication. Okay, I think that's enough for today. Leave a comment with some questions, and I will answer those in another video if I can. Thank you.